Hi, my name is Matt, and I'm 31 days away from running the New York City Marathon, which is beyond my wildest childhood dreams. And today I'm going to talk a bit about how I've trained for this race and how it's differed from what I have done in the past. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Matt Izzo. In 2016, I lost 75 pounds for the third and final time. I've now maintained that weight loss for the last 7+ years, which I consider to be the most important achievement of my life because that has been the foundation upon which all the other positive changes I've made in my life during that time have been built upon. It's all been built upon a foundation of health and fitness. In 2019, I got involved in endurance sports. It was something that I never thought was possible for me. I grew up, I was a fat kid, I had asthma, I couldn't run. Remember, there's nothing worse than having to run the mile in gym class. It seemed like just endless torture I was being subjected to. And I also remember at one point my parents knew somebody who ran the New York City Marathon, and they were both super impressed by this. And that stuck with me as a kid. And I didn't think it was ever possible for me to do something like that. I didn't think it was possible for me to ever run further than about 5 miles up until 2019 when I got involved in endurance sports. But in 2019, I did my first ever triathlon, and then in 2020, I ran my first marathon, and now this will be my 7th marathon in the last 4 years, and one of those was a full distance Ironman race. So I've trained a lot for these events over these years, and I've done it some different ways, and I want to talk about how it's affected me, how my training has gone in general, and how I've made changes to what I've done over the years. Now, in 2019, when I got involved in endurance sports, I really had no background in any of this stuff. I did walk a lot for a number of years. I walked 10,000 steps every day as part of my weight loss plan and then maintaining it. So I was pretty fit back then because I had lifted weights for a while. I'd done some high intensity cardio. So I wasn't totally out of shape when I got involved in this. But then when I did my first ever race, I didn't do very well, obviously. I didn't have enough time to train for it. I just kind of showed up and did it, and it went well enough. I got across the finish line, and then I realized I needed to take a different approach if I wanted to do longer races and if I wanted to perform better at these races. So in 2019, I ran my first ever half marathon. I did that basically just by extending my long run every week for the 6 or 8 weeks building up to that half marathon. And, even though I didn't think I could ever run further than 5 miles, well, one week I ran 6, and I was like, oh, okay. And the next week I ran 7, and the next week I ran 8, and sooner or later I was like, wait, this limiting belief I've held on to my entire life about my running ability, it just isn't true. And I can go further and run better than I ever thought was possible. So I finished that half marathon in 2019, and then 2020 obviously was the pandemic year, so I had planned to do an Ironman 70.3 race, which was canceled, and then I ended up signing up to run the Harrisburg Marathon in November of 2020. And I did not really do a full-on marathon training regimen for this, just because I had been in the process of training for the Ironman 70.3 for most of that year. So I was very fit when I began training for the marathon, but I only dedicated about 10 weeks of dedicated run training to running that marathon. I did hit 20 miles once. I hit 16 a couple of times. I really lined up for that one, thinking I could potentially break 4 hours, which was tied into that childhood dream that I had. I ended up finishing it in 4:05, which for my first marathon, considering my background and my lack of experience at running and endurance sports, was a pretty impressive achievement. But it left me wanting more. So I knew at some point I'd have to come back and run another marathon to try to break the 4-hour mark. That was put on the back burner for a bit because in 2021 and 2022, I focused again on middle and long distance triathlon. In 2021, my main race was the Ironman 70.3 that I finally finished. And then in 2022, my main race was Ironman Florida, which obviously also involves a marathon during the run portion. It wasn't really running a conventional marathon in a lot of ways. I didn't do a whole lot of running volume building up to that, just because when you're training for an Ironman, you spend a lot of your time swimming and biking, and those are obviously going to be less intense on the body. So your ability to recover from those sessions is going to be easier. So I would only run 2, maybe 3 times a week when I was really in my peak build. I don't think I broke more than 30 miles at any point during that build up. I was in fantastic cardiovascular shape, but there's really no substitute for just getting the miles on your legs when you're going to run a long distance. And I didn't really have all that preparation that I would need to really do well at a marathon. And then in the Ironman race, I had some issues with my bike fit, so I had some really serious back issues. And the run turned into more of a walk, especially toward the last few miles. My body just broke down, and again, this left me wanting a bit more because I knew I had more to give. I knew I could run a good marathon, but it wasn't going to happen after the 2.4-mile swim and the 112-mile bike ride. I'd signed up for the Miami Marathon, which was about 12 weeks after Ironman Florida in January of 2023. Now, in hindsight, I would say that I was probably overextending myself a bit with my training. I dedicated 38 weeks of intensive training to Ironman Florida, and then to just jump right into 12 weeks of marathon training following that, it was pushing myself a little harder than I probably should have been. But lesson learned, right? So I wasn't necessarily able to prepare for the Miami Marathon as I would have liked. I couldn't really build up the running volume. I had to take some time to recover from the Ironman, and then by the time I got back to running, I ended up getting sick, which took a lot of wind out of my sails, and that's probably not a coincidence since I did push myself a bit over beyond what I would typically be doing. So when I lined up to run the Miami Marathon in 2023, I felt really good. Miami Marathon is a challenging race, though, for a number of reasons, and the main one is the heat and the humidity and just the sun. And the longer you're out on that course, the harder that race gets because you're just out there in the sun and in the heat. And even though it's in January, the temperature is still above 80 degrees with the sun out, with the high humidity. So running that race is really challenging. I thought I was going to really crush that race. It's hard to kind of gauge Miami Marathon performance, though, based upon those conditions. I did finish it. I think I finished, like 4:13. So I did reasonably well considering all the things that were at play. That was my third marathon. And then as I went into 2023, following that, I didn't really know what I was going to do. And I ran a half marathon that spring. I felt really good. I trained for the half marathon running about 25 to 30 miles a week, but I liked it more than just the marathon training because there's more intensity, there's more opportunities to run intervals and tempo runs and the sort of running that's fun, whereas the longer endurance training for marathons and Ironmans, it involves a lot of just long, what we might call easy sessions, but there's nothing easy about a 2-3 hour run or a 4 or 5 hour bike ride. No matter how much you're exerting yourself, that's never going to be easy. So as I got into that half marathon in 2023 in Chicago in the spring, I was feeling really good, and I ran that race really well. And then I set my sights on breaking the 4-hour mark in a marathon, which again was part of my childhood dream. And I knew that if I would commit myself to a training regimen and really stick with it, that I could achieve this goal. So I signed up to run the Long Beach Marathon in Long Beach, California. I spent all summer in 2023 running outside in Miami in the heat and humidity. I would have to leave the house by 6:30 every morning because it didn't get any less hot. I ended up running 550 miles in July, August, and September outside in Miami, and that was really difficult. But it got me in great shape. I did pour a lot of energy into that, though. So I was drained from just all that training outside in the heat, in the humidity. It got me in great shape to run, but it definitely took away from other areas of my life. And of course, there's more to my life than just trying to run a faster marathon. So I signed up to go to Long Beach. I felt really good going into Long Beach. I didn't really know how to approach that race just because there's so many different variables in terms of the weather in Long Beach on the day of the race versus how I had been training. I knew that it was going to be easier for me to run in those conditions than in Florida, but I just didn't really know how much easier. So it's really hard to kind of pace a marathon. If you've never run a marathon, that's one of the most challenging parts about it. Even if you have run one, it's still challenging because you don't necessarily know how hard to go when you're first lining up because you got a long run ahead of you. So I did really well in Long Beach. I got to the 20-mile mark, and I actually felt fresh as a daisy. And I really just put the pedal to the metal, and I finished that in 3:55, and honestly, I probably could have run that marathon 10 minutes faster had I paced my effort differently. I felt really strong as I finished. I felt great, and it was a real sense of accomplishment. And then I wanted to run the Miami Marathon again, but I didn't have it in me to really train for it like I had. I needed a bit of a rest. I knew that given the conditions surrounding Miami, it wasn't going to be a really strong race in terms of how I would perform at it. So I just basically kind of kept in shape. I think I hit 16 miles as my long run in the build up to the Miami Marathon. This is about 3 or 4 months following the Long Beach Marathon, so January 2024. I lined up to run the Miami Marathon again. I didn't have any expectations for this race. I really just treated it like a fun run. So I just took it easy to start with, and I just kind of went out for a nice, easy, light jog. I held up pretty well, but obviously being out there in the heat and humidity, it was even hotter in 2024 than it was in 2023. It took a toll on me. I ended up finishing that, I think, in like 4:35, which, again, all things considered, was a pretty decent achievement. It's no joke running that race. It's one of the most challenging events I've done, even compared to like something like an Ironman, because the temperature just makes it oppressive. So following that, I said, well, you know what? I'm going to go out and run another marathon, because why not? I don't necessarily have to do a specific training regimen for it. I could just treat it like a fun run. I'm in shape. I can run 20, 26 miles if I need to. So I'll just keep it up and then show up at another race and run it again. And I did that in May of 2024 at the Orange County Marathon, the OC Marathon in Newport Beach, California. And again, I kind of approached this one as a bit of a fun run, but then my ego got involved while I was out there running, and I saw the time that I was running, and I said, well, you know what? It looks like I could potentially break 4 hours, or maybe even set a PR based on how I was doing. I ran the first half of that one about the same speed that I ran the first half of the Long Beach race. Well, I wasn't in the sort of shape for OC Marathon that I was for Long Beach, and I really hit the wall around mile 21 of that race. Had to stop, do some walking. It was a bit of a lesson for me to learn, in that I gave up what my plan was going into the race, because I got that, ego took over and just said, all right, let's go see what we can do, which is fine. But that left me feeling pretty depleted, and because I wasn't really foreseeing putting in that sort of effort to it, and I felt really demoralized that I wasn't able to finish the race the way I wanted to, the way I decided to in the middle of it. So that was a challenging thing for me. And then I had gotten into the marathon lottery for the New York City Marathon, which I enter every year, and I actually won it this year. So I was signed up to run the New York City Marathon, which is going to be in November 2024, 31 days away. And I was looking forward to just really doing an intensive training regimen again for it, so I could really put my best foot forward, put out a great performance there. But when the time came to start doing it, I didn't feel like doing that. I didn't have it in me. My energy was still really depleted from all these years of endurance training. It's taken a lot out of me in a lot of ways. So I listened to my body, I worked with myself, and I took sort of a hybrid approach, where I'm not necessarily treating this like, just a fun run. I'm just going to, stay in shape and show up for it. But I am running a lot less in preparation for it. So I'm doing 3 runs per week training for New York City. Doing 1 long run, so 12 to 20 miles. I'm going to hit 20 once. That's going to be 2 weeks out from the marathon. I have a 16 coming up on this weekend. This is 4 weeks out. Otherwise, it's been pretty much 12 or 14. I haven't done a huge volume of running. I've been between like 25 and 30 miles every week, which seems a little low, obviously, if I'm really concerned about performance, but I'm really not at this point. I've already broken 4 hours. There's really no other performance metrics that seem reasonable to me, that really appeal to me, and this is going to be my last marathon for a while at least, because running these things is challenging, and if I've learned anything through the process, it's that, running a marathon at a race is a energetically demanding thing. Even if you are in great shape, even if you are a capable distance runner, if you go out there and you run 26.2 miles at anything approaching race effort, you are going to be left depleted from that. And it's really important to allow ample time for recovery, not just of your physical systems, but of your other energy as well, your chi energy, your life force. That gets depleted during these events. And over these years of training for endurance races, this is what I've learned. So following New York City, I'm not intending to sign up for another full distance marathon for a while, maybe if ever. This will be my 7th marathon in just under 4 years, which again, if I look back to where I was only a few years ago, it seems to be an incredible achievement. And now it's just kind of normalized. But I'm going to really focus more on getting back into triathlon. I liked how it felt to swim, bike, and run every week. Running less, right? Maybe 2 sessions per week, shorter runs, 3 to 6 miles most of the time, and then just getting in those swimming and those cycling sessions, which are much lower impact on the body, but they also help build up the aerobic capacity, help me feel good, and so it feels great to get back into the pool. I've been swimming a lot these last few weeks, and following New York City, I'm going to really get back into it, and I'm going to start riding the bike a lot too outside. Not necessarily training, but just getting comfortable being back on the bike. Hopefully we'll sign up for some short course triathlon races in the coming spring in 2025, along with maybe some shorter running races. I'd like to really train for a 5K. I enjoy the speed aspect of running more so than the endurance distance aspect, at least at this point in time. I think I've kind of proven to myself what I'm capable of on the endurance side, and I'm looking forward to trying to run a fast 5K, maybe trying to set a new PR in the 5K, and just not worrying so much about doing these long 90, 120, 240 minute runs that are draining and depleting. And even when you do a 12 or a 16-mile run, it really takes away from that whole rest of your day, and it takes away from other areas of your life. So as I run New York City and move beyond that, I'm looking forward to taking a more balanced approach, a more holistic approach, one where the exercise and the training supports and builds my energy more so than taking away from it. Exercise is a great way to build our energy, but we have to make sure it's balanced, because we can overdo it. We can overexert ourselves, and it's a question of being in that proper balance. If you do want to give everything to an event or 2 or 3 or whatever, that's great, but you have to allow time and space for that recovery to happen, not just of the physical body systems, but of the emotional systems, of the chi systems, of the life force energy. It's really important, because as an amateur athlete, there's more to life than just running this race. Even though it might not seem like it, there are other areas of your life that require your time and your energy. So to live a happy, balanced life means giving the appropriate energy to all those things. And that's what I'm looking forward to doing as I approach the New York City Marathon and whatever comes beyond.